We have already talked about the story at McGill University several times. The encampment, of course, that has been there since the end of April is still there right now. And then yesterday, McGill University issued yet another statement with respect to what it is prepared to do to try to bring the pro-Palestinian encampment there to an end. Now, it's being described as a new offer. I think it's more of a revised offer to these protesters, but let's try to get some details on this. Fabrice Labeau is the deputy provost at McGill University. He is on the line. Monsieur Labeau, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. So let's start with this. You're calling it a new offer. What's different in here from what you've done in the past?
So this is indeed a new offer in a series of offers we've put on the table as we were trying to get a peaceful resolution through discussion with the campers and especially the people who are members of the McGill community in the encampment. And so the new things we've put on the table here is that we've basically attached some timelines to our offers, and we've added to the offer an offer of disciplinary amnesty for the McGill students or employees for their participation in the encampment, and that offer is valid until June 15th.
All right, so let me touch on a couple of points here. This is not the only protest that has happened at a university in this country. There have obviously been others. This seems to be, though, in the case of McGill, so far, and correct me if I'm wrong, the only university that has not sort of resolved this by either having them leave or basically, accessing or basically agreeing to their demands, if you will. Why is it taking McGill so long to reach a conclusion here? What's the issue?
So I think there's a diversity of situations in different universities across the country and across North America, and so we're not the only ones to not have reached a conclusion. But I would say that in our case, what we're putting on the table, the propositions we've put on the table, they're very, very similar to propositions that have led to resolutions at other universities and have led the campers to dismantle their encampment. So we're hoping that the people we want to discuss with will discuss in good faith and look at the proposals that we've made as reasonable and serious.
Yeah, well, hope is an interesting word because there's been a lot of hope here that they might perhaps pick up and leave. It hasn't worked. That original request for an emergency injunction, of course, was denied. I know you have another one before the courts now, but it won't be addressed, I'm guessing, for weeks, maybe even longer than that. It seems to me in the last statement I read from McGill, you made a point of the fact that these people, these protesters, have walked away from the table previously. What makes you think this will be any different?
Well, as I was saying earlier, we were always trying to get a resolution for this encampment. So we said from the get-go that this encampment, it is illegal and it is against our policy. So we definitely want the encampment gone because it's creating a lot of problems also on our campus, and that culminated last week in the tentative occupation of one of our administration buildings. So definitely our aim is to not have this encampment anymore. While we're stating that, we're trying to pursue all the possible avenues. So as you say, we have an injunction that has been submitted. We're waiting for the hearing for that injunction in the hope that it's going to help us resolve this problem as fast as possible. At the same time, we want to try and continue discussing with the campers and with the idea that hopefully they will, as I said, see our proposals as reasonable and hopefully that they will be satisfied with them and decide themselves to dismantle the encampment.
Yeah, the question then becomes, of course, we can hope for an excellent, for a peaceful resolution here, an end to all this. But what if it doesn't happen? Then what?
So I think for now, as I said, we're pursuing all the avenues we can, and the injunction is another avenue that we're following that would give us at least some legal avenue for the dismantlement.
Have you previously asked, and one of the issues I think here has been from the get-go, the confusing messages sent by various levels of government. We heard Fabrice Labeau at the beginning say he would imagine the police, it would be time for them to move in. They did not. The mayor of Montreal said it's up to the police to decide. Has McGill directly asked police to intervene at any point during this?
So we have been in discussions and in communication with the police from day one, from the day this encampment was established. We've asked for the help of the police in intervening 2 or 3 days into the encampment. Of course, the police will act according to their own protocols, and I think that it's for them to explain the details of what these protocols are. We're still in communication constantly with the police, and I have to say that with the events of the tentative occupation of last week, we're very thankful that they were there to intervene and help us in that case.
Well, so then let me ask you, with respect to the fact that you had this ongoing communication with the police and the occupation of the administration building aside, what indication have they given you as to when they might be prepared to go ahead and do anything beyond what happened in the building?
Well, so
in other words, what would it take for them, as far as they have told you, for them to get involved?
Well, I think I think it's for the police to give you a better sense than me in terms of what criteria they need to be fulfilled. But
you asked the police. What did they say to you? What was their answer to you in terms of those criteria?
Oh, absolutely, and I think you can see the chief of police has been in the news explaining a bit their own protocol, where they need three criteria to be fulfilled in terms of a legal basis, in terms of an emergency, and a criminal act. And so I think that's exactly what they're following. But again, I would leave it to the police to give you the exact wording that describes their own protocols, because that's really not all protocols and all process.
So I will refer back to what we talked about when I brought up other Canadian universities that have faced themselves in a similar situation. Have you been in contact with other universities who have had encampments?
Of course, you can imagine that we are always in constant contact with other universities across the province, across Canada, across North America, whenever we face challenges, because we realize that very often the challenges we face are similar in other locations. That being said, every university is different for several reasons in terms of what kind of university community we have, but also the location in which we are and the potentially different laws and bylaws that apply to the province and the city.
Okay. One question we get a lot whenever this comes up is these people are on private property, belongs to McGill. Why is it not simply a matter of saying, okay, it's our property, you had enough, we don't want you here anymore, and you have to leave?
So I think it's pretty clear that our perspective that it is indeed all private property. We are hearing a lot of arguments around the fact that this is private property with public access, which seems to be nuancing the way in which people think about what's happening on our campus. But from the university's perspective, pretty clearly, this is our private property. This encampment is illegal.
If this doesn't work, this new offer, this revised offer to students to sit down, and I will mention, by the way, with respect to the offer, there's not talk or in this offer an offer of divestment in and of itself. It's a review of direct equity investments in some entities. I don't know why you think that perhaps would make these people who seem to be pretty committed to this whole idea of divestiture think this is enough for them to leave. So if this doesn't happen, beyond the injunction that's before the courts, what happens next? What is McGill prepared to do after that?
Well, so I think to your point about divestment, I think when we're offering a review of our investments by specific entities, and in this case we're talking about entities that have a dominant portion of their direct revenue from military weapons, the idea here for us is to actually follow a process. This is important for us because these are complicated matters. They need to actually be discussed seriously. We can't just turn around and make a decision of divestment just like that. We do have a process, and we do have a committee that is a committee of our board whose main job is actually to look at these kind of things, looking at our investment policies and potential expressions of concerns from the community. So what we're offering is the only process that may actually lead to some form of divestment at McGill.
If I can have you clarify, with respect to divestment of these entities that are involved in military production of military weapons, is this all countries, or is this specifically supplying weapons to Israel, or is this divestiture or considering divestiture from all companies involved in military production anywhere in the world?
Definitely, we want to do this regardless of the countries in which the companies operate, and that's to me the definition of a reasonable way of looking at this. It's looking at whether or not, as a university, we think that there is a social harm in investing in companies that really predominantly produce military weapons, wherever they are in the world.
Okay, and as a final question, what's the timeline on this before students decide yes or no, and if this happens or not?
So we've sent this new offer on Monday to the McGill students in the encampment. We're still waiting to hear from them, but one implicit timeline that is clear in the offer is that the disciplinary amnesty is for acts committed before June 15th, which is during this weekend.
So amnesty for all those involved, but excluding those who were involved in the takeover of the administration building.
So the amnesty is really covering the issues, the disciplinary issues related to being present in the encampment. As I said earlier, this encampment is against our policies. So there are specific sections of our policies that say you cannot be in a place where you're not authorized to be. So that is specifically what the amnesty would cover.
I just want to ask one last thing again, something that has come up on numerous occasions, the idea that all these students who are there are not all McGill students. It's become fairly obvious. Some are just there as agitators. Some are just there because it's a convenient place to be. Have you gone through a process where you've asked them to identify themselves as McGill students and if not, to leave?
So that's something that we've done from the get-go, but the reality on the ground is that as a university, even our security in the services in our university, we do not have the right to force people to identify themselves. So of course we ask people to identify themselves, but we don't have the legal power to force them to do so. So there remain some questions as to who is in that encampment. It's been very clear, as you say, simply from looking at the spokespeople in the media, looking at some of the banners on this encampment, that there's a lot of people who are not from the McGill community in there.
But you can make them leave.
Exactly.
Mr. Labeau?
That's where we are stuck.
Okay. I thank you so much for your time, and I think all of us hope there's a quick resolution to this. It's gone on long enough. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.